Is it true that Bill Gates had a home automation system going back to the early 90s?
Last week we talked about giving away a Jetson Orin Nano, and today is the day that we give it away. So at some point randomly in today's episode, I will disclose the winner. Chris, the guy I bought it all from, replies and then sends me an email saying, well, I've got the rack all the equipment was in. Yeah, I heard a lot of kind of violent solutions, people dropping them an inch or whatever onto a hard desk and things like that. Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm joined as always by my co-host Glen. How are you doing, Glen?
I am well, Dave. And how are you?
I'm doing well myself. Glad to hear it. So last week we talked about giving away a Jetson Orin Nano, and today is the day that we give it away. So at some point randomly in today's episode, I will disclose the winner based on which comment that I thought had the best episode idea in it. And of course I could do that now, or I could do it at the very end and you would just fast forward, but no, I'll just do it randomly. So now you're committed. So what do we got for questions now that I got him on the hook?
Yeah, so let's go. You dropped an episode on Dave's Garage there about buying the biggest hard drive, and in some ways to go along with the biggest computer, although it works on the smaller micro versions now.
It does.
So Kerbo on YouTube, or Kerbo on YT. It's a great video, Dave, and he asked everybody for a show of hands. Who has had to slam a Seagate on a desk to get it to spin up? The good old days.
Yeah, I heard a lot of kind of violent solutions, people dropping them an inch or whatever onto a hard desk and things like that. And I mean, it was a shock. Probably when I cracked the screw loose on the case is when mine popped free. I don't think it was torque on the case or anything. It was just the shock of the screw releasing. Sent a little shiver through the machine, and that was enough to free it up. I would not recommend dropping them. No. Maybe knock them from the side if you got to knock them so the heads don't get dislodged towards the platters as a last resort. But I would probably recommend that if it's anything important, obviously you send it away and have somebody in a clean room open it. But it's probably nothing important if it's on an old ST506 drive. So, yeah, give it a knock, I guess. And if that doesn't help, open it up and spit it up. But once they've been opened, it's hard to... Once they've been knocked on the side, it's also hard to treat them as reliable. But so,
and that's not the. I mean, on the hard drive, that's a pretty specific, and you have to be way more careful with that. But there are some fussy problems with these old machines, and you've encountered that with the one PDP you're working on. It was fine on the bench. You move to the floor, it stops working. I think you had some more issues in the last few days taking in and moving cards, and sometimes they work, and then you come back a half hour later and it doesn't work, and you wiggle them and then they start working again. It's just
yeah, that machine, I think it's got kind of a wonky backplane, which is where all the slots are, because I found one slot does not power up the network adapter, although the card is there and gets found. It doesn't power the network adapter when it's in a one particular slot. So I know something is wrong with that slot. Ergo, something is wrong with the backplane. So I can't really trust anything about the backplane because I already know it's partly broken. I'm not sure about that machine. I think they're going to be relegated to 4th tier, and I'll move the parts up to, well, you're going to bring me a new one when Chris brings it to you.
Yeah,
so that'll be my 4th one.
Yeah.
My 4th BA23 case. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not a problem. You can stop anytime.
I am looking for the plastic case that goes the BA23 mounts in, or a rack mount with the faceplate for a BA23. So if you got any leads on the big white tower case, or the rack mount stuff and the faceplate that goes on a BA23, either way, I'm looking for both. So
if you found the rack mount, where would you put that?
Well, so Chris, this guy that I bought a bunch of PDP-11 stuff from, he's moving and downsizing. And so he reached out and he said, here's my list of stuff. And it's mostly stuff that I've already got. So I kind of cherry picked and said, I'll take that and that and that and that and that. And we agreed to a price. And so I bought that. And that was that initial batch of stuff you brought to me last week. And, but a couple weeks later, he reached out again and said, well, what about the rest of it? I'd just rather sell it as a whole package deal. So I bought the rest of it. And so that's what he's bringing to you. Then I realized, I've got so much stuff now. I can't just really set this all on the floor, and I don't want to do it all as towers. What I really need is a rack, and then I can rack mount some of these machines in a real deck rack. So I posted on the PDP-11 group on Facebook saying, hey, does anybody have any leads on a rack? Like maybe a 60-inch one. I don't want the big 8-foot tall one. And Chris, the guy I bought it all from, replies and then sends me an email saying, well, I've got the rack all the equipment was in, so I'm going to get that rack.
So I'm
But
going
it
to
won't
need a
fit in
bigger
your
boat.
car. Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm trying to get some weight and dimensions on it so I can get freight quotes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's got to come
Boy.
across the border too. So
Yeah. Oh, I might be able to find a way here. Will it fit in the back of my Audi wagon? If I fold the seat down.
maybe if it's 60, it's got 60 inches of room. It's 60, and then it's probably 30.
Lengthwise, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's probably 30 tall. Oh, well, I'm
Yeah,
not going to guess the dimensions. We'll figure it out.
No,
but
the height, yeah, we'll see. That might be an option. I'd have to talk to the dog to negotiate taking its car away for the weekend. So,
yeah, you can't drive the whole weekend you're going.
well, no, but it's the dog's car. Lets my wife drive her around in it, so that's pretty handy. But anyways, let's get back to these questions here. Runt to Groot says, stiction. Lift the front of the machine an inch or so and let it drop. Sorted. He said, looking at and hearing that drive, he said, I suspect that the deck stack later stuck a SCSI interface onto it and then put them into the deck station. He said you could hear them in the office, the next office block when they were giving it to them. That tar command is God's gift. He used it all the time. Loved that video, man. So bringing back some reminiscence for him there.
Yeah, I've got a couple RD52 drives here that are clearly Quantum 800s. So the deck sells them as an RD52, but they're just a 40 meg Quantum hard drive. And I think they may have used a couple other manufacturers that made something with the same geometry. The big RA93, I don't know who actually makes the mechanism for that. I couldn't see it on the label, so maybe it was DEC, but I would assume they would farm it out.
Yeah, and you've got more than one to check the labels on too. So
I do. I got two now.
280813JB. When powered off, do the heads actually stop and rest on the disk platter, or do they retract off the platter to a resting place?
It really depends on the type of drive. On the RK05s, on the big PDP-11 they go up a ramp, so the heads come out and they split, and then they go up a ramp and they stay away from the drives. In other drives, they just retreat to an area of the drive that's not used for data and is still lubricated and so on, and they slow down, and so they do their spin up and slow down in a parking area or a landing zone, I guess they call it.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating.
And some
Roy
really cheap
Smith.
drives didn't do any of that. I had a, what the heck was it, XT IDE drive in my Amiga, that Amiga 500 or A590 expansion. It did nothing. It had a stepper motor instead of a voice coil. It didn't park the heads. Really basic drive, but it worked.
Wow. Yeah. Until it didn't?
Oh, I think it always works. It's probably still working wherever it is.
There you go. Wherever it is, yeah. Roy Smith. He says, I think you're confused about the RK05. The removable version was 2.4 or maybe 2.5 megabytes. And you are right that the RK05F did double the capacity on the same cartridge by nailing it in place.
Yeah, I honestly thought that they were 1 and 2 megabytes, but they're actually 2.5 and 5 megabytes. So they actually have more capacity than I haven't seen them work yet. So they've got zero capacity for me, but in working condition.
Yeah. And that's a nice correction he drops in at the end there. Love your videos though. So he's, yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving me the right data because it was news to me. So my drive just got massively bigger.
Excellent. Yeah. Two mints in one. L. McNeil. I wonder if that partition in use error was caused by that drive not being properly shut down the last time it was run. Isn't there a bit that gets set upon proper booting and unset upon proper shutdown?
There's a clean, dirty bit, but that's done by the file system. And this is at the partition level, even before you create a file system on it. So what's actually happening without doing a 3-hour rat hole on this issue is the drive comes by default formatted as one big partition, and you can't change or shrink that partition is the challenge. So what you have to do is create another partition with a different name on the same disk with the same cylinders, basically mirror that partition. So now you've got an A and you've got a C, and they're both the whole drive. Now you can mount that C drive and then modify the disk label and partition on that one to shrink the A partition that you're not currently on. And there's some editing of the F tab or disk tab to get the geometry to match whatever's on the disk. There's about 3 or 4 important steps. And if you don't get them all right, you just get it in use or you get an invalid ioctl. Can't write. Well, you saw it. I was fighting with them for quite a while.
My follow-up question is be, and how did you figure that out, Dave?
Many days of trial and error and seeing what works. And
It was hours of entertainment and frustration. And
yeah.
I need to go think. Yeah. But it got solved. That's the cool part.
Yeah, sometimes I do a lot of troubleshooting in the shop. You know, I watch Adrian's Digital Basement, and he makes troubleshooting hardware quite entertaining. But I don't film it when I'm doing it, and it's just hard to be, you know, you're thinking for a long time. I guess you edit it all out and you just keep the witty parts. But I'll have to try it sometime, but it's not something I've ever done. So
Yeah, I don't know how you'd string that together in an episode. I mean, it'd be a lot of screen recording, and then, you know, all the different things you're trying, and all the different errors. And
yeah, if I had like an in-house editor
back.
intern,
Yeah.
and I could record my desktop all day and have a camera set up all day and then record highlights in between and just say, here's all the footage, make something cool. That's what I would do.
Anton's little stepbrother or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of footage to have anybody do off-site. I mean, I've got fiber. I got 5 gig fiber, so if they also had good fiber, then I suppose it could be done.
Okay, F. Burton 8. 411. Wait, what? Does that mean you could have 2 separate computers sharing the same drive?
I don't know if they allowed that. I can't imagine. I think it's 2 controllers in the same system, both talking to the same drives, and how they coordinate, I don't know. So basically all you're preventing is a failure of the controller or of the path to the drive or of the port on the drive. But I'm not sure what kind of redundancy they had. All I know is that you can hook up 2 controllers to each drive.
And Knick-Knack Gus, give your dog a bone. Oh, that's Paddywhack, sorry. Any chance CP, I guess, hyphen archive existed at the time? Because that does correctly copy links, attributes, etc. recursively.
Yeah, as far as I know, BSD, it's IRS, because I remember IRS, are the only options for the CP command.
Okay.
So no attribute command
archive
yet.
option, yeah.
Or attribute archive.
Sean Wright, wow. How did those wizards get such a setup running back in the day? It doesn't sound like that was flexible enough to get it going from the ground up without the modern support and any reasonable amount of time or effort. I think we had sort of chatted about that too.
Yeah, I think if you did it for a living and you knew what you were doing, you'd done it enough times, and you could bring a machine up in a certain, you bring it up off tape, and you format the drive, and you know all the hardware is good because it's all brand new. You're not fighting with 40-year-old hardware at all times and trying to make a mismatch of components work together. It's probably something spec'd by deck to work together, and so on and so forth. So they've got a somewhat easier playing field, but it's still impressive that those guys could come in and set up a system like that and make it all work and not spend 3 weeks having to do it.
Yeah, and not every little tip, trick, and thing that they figured out in the field made it into the manual.
Right.
Right. So
there's a lot of lore, I imagine.
You got access to the manual, but it's not all in there. There's some tips and tricks that are learned by the field warriors. WADS 668. That thing is quite impressive. And if we've had this question before, I think too. What was the PDP-11 actually used for? It looked relatively modern. I assumed it was something from the early 70s, but it looks like something from the late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, this is the micro PDP, right?
Yeah, this is micro, and not that it's tiny. It's micro in that it is based on LSI technology. So they've reduced things down to single chips instead of being entire boards. Sorry, what was the question on this machine again?
Just
distracted by that.
What were the PDP-11s used for?
Oh yeah,
at the time.
So this machine could have 8 or 16 serial ports. So you could have a whole bunch of people logged into the machine at once. And imagine a car rental agency or ticketing counter at an airport, those kind of things where back in the days before everybody just used a PC and a headless server and a bunch of thin clients, they used terminals connected to either a mainframe at a central location, or if it was a small branch office, they might have a PDP-11 like this with, 8 ports, that kind of thing. And everybody logged into it that way. So small business, small to medium. So I guess it's sort of like if you only had 8 to a dozen users, it sort of acted as your server then? Yeah. You're all logged into it at once.
Right. Yeah.
And you're sharing the system. And as long as you're not doing a lot of CPU intensive tasks, it doesn't have too much trouble serving that many people as long as it's got a decent amount of memory.
And it's not late 70s. Those machines were early 80s, were they?
Yeah, this one was 1982.
Yeah. And the last, was it up till like 91, 92 was the last?
Yeah, the big drive, the 2 gigabyte drive is dated 92. So it's actually like a 10-year span between the release of the machine and the release of the drive, but the drive was intended for these machines. So.
And that drive was sort of the last gasp to kind of keep these things useful for a lot of folks who'd invest a lot of time and money into
Yeah,
them.
I think the drive was really intended for the VAX, and then they decided to sell a version for the PDP, and it was kind of the last big drive.
SBQM5WG. You ever use a Unibone?
Yeah, I got Unibone in my PDP-1134. I've got another Unibone on the desk in case I get another Unibus machine. And of course, I use the Cubone quite a bit in all the Qbus systems. So I've got like 3 Cubones and 2 Unibones.
Yeah, but it's not a problem. You can quit anytime.
Yeah. Anytime.
George, not sure where George is from, so I'm going to go with Z213. 21 heads. Did it have 11 platters?
I'm guessing, and why it's an odd number of heads, I don't know, because there should be a head on the top and the head on the bottom of each platter. The only thing I can think of is maybe they reserve an entire surface for metadata or something, or maybe there's a platter that just has a head on one side and it was just easier to manufacture or cheaper. Or I don't know why they didn't make it an even number with a head on both sides of every platter. If you know, let me know in the comments, because I'd be curious, why would they make such a thing?
There you go. Just a passerby. What? You couldn't find one of those washing machine-sized RPO3s, the 150 megabyte, or the RPO6 300 megabyte deck disk drives?
Yeah, there's an RPO6 coming to your house there, Glenn. So not the whole drive. It's just a disc pack, actually. Chris has a couple, and they're more like conversation pieces, but they're still pretty huge. So.
Oh, yeah, good thing that my daughter's boyfriend picked up the kitchen table and chair and the sectional that we had in the garage. I've got room now again, so that's okay. Flynn LR. Anyone remember the Plus Hard cards? 8-bit ISA 10 megabytes? Still have one around here somewhere.
Yeah, you could buy a chassis that was like a full slot, and you could mount a controller and a card in there. You can make your own hard cards is what I wound up doing, but you could also buy them just as a full-length card with a hard drive mounted right to it, plug it into a slot, and 3.5-inch hard drive on there. And I think the ones I saw were bigger than 10 megabytes, but not very big.
Winston Smith. Don't want to be an ESD Karen, but those PCBs on shag carpeting?
It's okay unless you touch them. I mean, I'm careful not to walk around, drag my feet, and then touch any electronics. You want to make sure you touch ground first, and so on and so forth.
And
I haven't cooked anything yet, so.
But you zapped your computer, I think, when I was there on the weekend.
Yeah, I walked up. What did I touch? The recording computer, or was it my main monitor?
I think it was the main monitor.
Yeah, I touched something and the whole thing shut off and turned back on. So.
I remember just that the case is sitting on the floor, and I kept looking in, expecting to see a flat bottom on it, and there's this carpet poking through it. Sort of caught my attention twice. And okay, it's not dust and dirt in there. It's just a carpet poking up, a little bit fuzzy. John Scherer. Dave, any chance you could do a video on what it would take to build a PDP-11 capable of running BSD?
Well, that's what I've been doing. The minimum possible computer I just kind of built today, actually, just CPU, RAM, and a hard drive controller and a hard drive. So that would be a short episode. But yeah, I think I did one on building a minimal PDP-11 on the bench, right? So I didn't want to get too close back to that one. But I could do a whole, I don't know, it would overlap with so many other things I've done with it that wouldn't hurt.
He says he's got a PDP-8 and a PDP-11. He said, which are indeed fun, as you know, but just not the same as having the. Well, you'll have one for sale coming up here maybe in the next few weeks or something.
Which, a PDP or a full system?
No, a real machine. You can buy that and run BSD on it. Watch for the eBay special. Rod Morgan. Great videos. Said especially for those of us that used these back in our university days. I guess that's where you got your start on it too. And he's got this unrelated question, him and a couple of others, about the background light in your video, that flame lamp. People want that thing. They want information about it. Where can I build it? Global JDM's doing the same thing. He's like, how do you get the files so they can? He thinks you might have printed it. Did you print out that flame lamp?
No, it's actually a lamp I got from Home Depot, and they were like $100, and they are just white LEDs. So I carefully took the covers off the LEDs and then stripped the LEDs out and all the electronics from the base. Made my own extended base to hold a power supply and an ESP32 and the other equipment, and ran my own LEDs up the helical channels, programmed it, and built it. I did film some of the build, so I could do an episode on it, but I guess I do. I get a lot of questions about it, so I should probably cover it.
Well, and that's the one you stole back from your. You put that in Brooklyn's in your daughter's room, and then you've stolen it back. You've got the bits and pieces to put another one together, but it's bit of a chore. And then Uncle Rogelio, he says he wants to know too, because he feels the need to add it to his Dave's LED toy collection. So
there you go.
He may be a mesmerizer purchaser already. So
yeah, those are on eBay.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning that the mesmerizer, which is over your shoulder doing a fireplace, I think it is there, right? I've got them on eBay right now. So don't get it unless you're sort of a programmer, tinkerer, and have some familiarity with ESP32. It is a full kit, ready to just plug in, assemble, and run. But you'll have more fun if you can reprogram it yourself and mess around with it.
Global, he was talking about that in Uncle Rogelio. There we go. Coldly Analytical. Dave, he says he's got a little book called Writing for the Reader, printed in 1976 by DEC. And it's about how to write documents properly. He wants to know if you collect books as well, and if you want, you can have it.
I do have a little DEC documentation cupboard. It probably would go well in there. Sure, if you want to fire it in here, I wouldn't mind having it.
So how does he do that? Just shoot you an email or?
Yeah, reach out by email.
So we've made it through the biggest hard drive. Now we're on to our last shop talk here, where we're talking about that Orin Nano. So, you forgot about that already. At Shadow Ono. This might be at me. Is it C-Lang or Clang?
I know I say C-Lang because I only read it in books, but it's Clang is what people call it. So, but I will probably continue.
He spelled Clang with a K, which I thought was interesting too. But
okay,
because it would be Clang with a C, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay,
there we go. I thought that might have been one of my little. Someone caught me on a mispronunciation the other day. I think it was I was like IV, and it's like, yeah, that's 4. I'm like, oh yeah, Roman numerals screwing me up again. I don't know all this stuff.
It's IV o'clock.
But I love that I don't know all this stuff, and sometimes I screw stuff up in pronunciations. I sort of feel like a bit of a doofus, but then I get corrected or find out. And it's like, yeah, whatever. But I'm not the only one. I know there's other viewers who don't know all of this stuff either, so I'm representing them. Robert the Great. So this one, and I'll read. So it says, Dave, how about a facial recreational software? And I think that might have been a typo. It might be facial recognition. But
yeah.
Like the facial recreational software. I'm like, let's go with facial recognition.
Yeah, that would be a cool thing to do. I don't know how I would do it offhand. I don't know how to train a model on particular people's faces. It would be kind of a cool project. Kind of reminds me, we should probably take a second to announce the winner of the Orin Nano Super. Are you ready? Because I can't pronounce his name. It's Null L1i. So
yay! His
idea was to rig
goes off.
Yeah. Rig the Jetson Orin Nano for home automation with Home Assistant, run large language models, text to speech like HAL 9000, and speech to text. So yeah, I would like to do that and get it set up so that you can have conversations with it over the room speakers or over some kind of speaker microphone setup. So I'm going to tinker around with that when I get some time and hopefully make an episode out of that. So nobody else, what I need is for the Null guy to reach out to me by email, and then I will get him to confirm his YouTube address. So I will not contact anybody. I will not offer to give you a present if you send me money. And there's a whole set of YouTube scams when you're doing giveaways where people, pretend to be the person giving it away and say, oh, but you need to send me $20 shipping, and then I'll send you your thing. And yeah, none of that. Don't worry about it. Don't pay anything to get anything. So,
and there's no Dave meme coin yet either.
Dave coin, yeah.
Dave coin. Don't be an early adopter on that one.
No. Guaranteed to go up.
So we will see the Orin Nano at some point having a conversation saying, Dave, what are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, it'd be nice if you could actually get his voice from 11 or something. 11 Labs, or a voice like it.
Yep. If not, it'll be your voice being
probably
the HAL talking to Dave, which could be curious. Maybe you can have a conversation with yourself as Dave is the HAL voice. Anyways, Let's go. Oh, thank you. Chris Simpson's going to save me here. Any headway in interviewing Tim Patterson, the person who made QDOS and who Microsoft got DOS from?
No, I haven't reached out, but I did see that he just did an interview with somebody, and I meant to watch that interview, but I have not yet watched that interview because it looks kind of long. But I will watch it and see if there are questions that I wish would have been asked that didn't get asked, and if so, then I will reach out.
Lord Chariot, I like these ones too. Hi, Dave and Glenn. What are your thoughts on, and I'll tell you right off the bat, I don't know what he's talking about, so I got no thoughts. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on industry or vendor-specific certifications like MCSE, CCNA, CISSP, etc.? It says his employer made him take and pass the must call someone else certification for NT 3.5 in the 90s and found it be a waste of time. He said most of the certification chasers he met really don't know anything significant about practical application, and he prefers to sort of see, do, or understand as you go. Yeah, and that's not just among the computer programmer and support guys. That's
Yeah, I think that fundamentally comes down to, do you want a job that requires that certification? And if so, then the certification is not just kind of handy, it's probably essential. If you just want to learn the topic, there are other ways to do it. So I'm not going to poop on the certification path. It's certainly one way to acquire that knowledge. And I think getting a certification does prove a certain baseline level of knowledge. It doesn't prove mastery in it necessarily, but it proves that you at least know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think employers, certainly with some of the stuff, all the little learning opportunities, are maybe using that as a way to take a quick cull of, okay, well, the people who have this stuff go into the first pile and the other ones don't. So it might separate you from some others. Whether or not you think it's an excellent course could be.
Yeah, like if you're a business and you want to hire somebody for TCP/IP and you get them with TCP/IP certification of some kind, and they come in, you go, well, I know they've got a baseline level of knowledge, but then the first day you're like, okay, I need you to set up IPsec, and they're like, oh, we didn't cover IPsec. So you really got to know, what that certification covers and what the level of knowledge that it implies, I guess.
And I like this. Larry Sanders. I just like seeing Larry Sanders. I heard this rumor going back to when he was a kid, and he's now in his 40s. Oh, so he's still a kid. Is it true that Bill Gates had a home automation system going back to the early 90s that would not only do things like turn lights on and off, but also set mood music and other such things when it detected someone walking in, and it would know who that person was and their preferences, so it knew what to set?
Yeah, I think it was actually you had to wear a badge, and it tracked the badge. So it wasn't doing facial recognition at the time. This was, late 90s. I never got to head over there. I was at his old place, but it was just a regular house. It wasn't the new Shangri-La on the lake there. So I've never been to the new place, so I never got a chance to take a look at it. Microsoft did have a little campus lab where they also had home automation and home theater and stuff like that set up. And I think some of it was developed there. But yeah, he did. He had a lot of early home automation art on the walls done by computer screens and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, burgers with Bill Gates, and I knew about that, but I never realized that was, I just assumed it was at his new fancy schmancy.
No, it was at his old place, which I believe he bought from Joe Diamond, who runs all the parking lots in Seattle, if I have my lore correct.
And in the same neighborhood? Or was
Other side of the lake entirely.
Oh, actually. Okay. Yeah. Because his place, the place that he's in, that was late 90s then that he moved into that, was it?
Mid to late 90s, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just
Sounds
a few years
right.
later. Yeah, cool. Music Dad, after reading your book, I think I too am autistic. Where do I go to get tested, and how much does it cost? You got some info from Music
For me,
Dad?
the actual diagnosis was covered by my insurance, but if you wanted the full report and plan and all their analysis written up for you, which I kind of did, it was over $1,000 out of pocket. So I did both. I got my free diagnosis and then my paid explanation, because I didn't want to just, autistic, big stamp on my file. And I wanted to know why and what the hell is going on. So really depends on what level of detail you want, but I would start with talking to your family doctor about a referral to a neurologist who specializes in an ASD ideally. And if your doctor blows you off, ask a different doctor, because you need a doctor that is qualified to tell you that you do or don't, not one that judges based on an office visit.
Last couple of questions here at Camera Shy. What is a Jetson Orin Nano Super? What does it do? How does it work? And why would I want one?
Well, I made a whole episode on that, so I will just point you to that episode. But the short answer is a single board computer that has 8 gigabytes of RAM that can be used for by the GPU for AI and inference and that kind of thing. So it's a small single board computer targeted towards AI with the hardware to do it. So it's got a GPU and it's got some video RAM that it uses for the GPU.
There you go. Last question here touches on something that we sort of were joking about last time at GFA Basic 32. If Canada annexes USA, can we then apply to win the prize? He lives in the rich Atlantic provinces. So the Atlantic provinces are on Canada's alleged other coast. Apparently we have more than one. You and I live on the Pacific coast, and I think the U.S. even apparently has an other coast somewhere, but not sure why that would matter.
Yeah, as long as sending stuff to America Junior from America doesn't cost more, then I can do it. But
I think any contest that goes outside of your continental U.S. states probably has a whole bunch of other conditions that we don't want to violate. So
yes, and if you are in Quebec, then they need you to complete a skill testing question.
Yeah, Amazon just pulled all their stores out of Quebec now too.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah. Or no, not the stores, the warehouses.
Or the warehouses. Yeah. Yeah. So we have rules for Canada, and then there are rules for Quebec that are even more unique and.
Yeah, and there are also rules for Canada because of Quebec. So, the stuff the rest of the country has to do. So.
Yep.
Interesting.
But that's why we are who we are.
Well, that was the big news in politics this week. So.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it. So a couple good episodes. We got a few questions out of there, and keep popping the questions in either Dave's Garage or this channel. Put a question mark in them, and that's how I pull them out. And what do you got to close off with today, Dave?
Not much. I'll just remind you to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And if you find this Q&A format interesting and you know somebody else who might enjoy it, even if they're familiar with Dave's Garage, go ahead and send it to them to let them know that it's out there, because not many people know about it yet. So would appreciate that. In the meantime, and in between time, let me retake that. You froze and I forgot what the heck I was saying.
Okay.
There we go. In the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time right here in Dave's Garage. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.